the topic at hand and get right into it. I'm talking about like anxiety, and I hope the bloom is not too much here. Too much. I'm just gonna turn a little bit. I just have a halo over my head, so let's see how that works out. Okay, for the moment, I'll talk to you about a couple of things. I wrote down a list of stuff to kind of make sense of this whole thing. Um, I want to give a shout out to everyone. Thanks specifically for my wife, Amy. She has been a blessing. She has gone through this with us. We have four kids. My wife and I have four children together. Only four kids. I only have four children, and pretty much I waited until we got married to have our children. So our kids are our kids, and we've had our kids since they were little itty bit. Since they were born. I was there for all four births of my children, and so pretty much I'm happy. I wanted to be a dad all my life, and I was um, glad to be a dad when my kids finally came along. So throughout the different years, right, we've been decided to homeschool our kids and go through a lot of different things. But I want to give you kind of a sense about what's going on now. See, right now we're going through this thing called not so much actual term of it all, but it's like pretty much I've labeled myself as such that this is a separation anxiety. Now that usually I think is a term that happens when people don't know what's going on and they're kind of like stuck in a situation where they're kind of giving to the fears of like what's going to happen. Not sure, but in this situation, we are not afraid of what we're facing. We are more concerned of what my kids might be facing. As mentioned, transformation is happening to us, and as we go on with life, what happens? We are considered just thinking about like how we've spent a lot of time growing up with them, and as we've been growing with them, what has happened is that we spend a lot of time just interacting with them, which most parents don't get a chance to do because most parents send their kids to school for 40 hours a week, and when they come home, they're really tired and exhausted from working, and incidentally, what ends up happening is that they have a situation where they have a stranger that's growing up with them, and eventually the distance and the information is just too much for people to be able to share. So what ends up happening is that kids tend they tend to become like their friends or become loyal to their friends, can spend more time with their friends than they do with their own parents. But in a situation where you homeschool your kids, you have this thing where you're actually spending a lot of time with your family. We've done a lot of museum trips, we've done a lot of homework stuff, we've done a lot of night school and afternoon school and summer school and winter school. We've done like mountain school and forest school. We've done museum school. We've done a lot of school. We've done Sunday school. We've done Monday school. We've done Saturday school. So all these different schools that we've done with the kids has made us into a kind of a thing where we spend a lot of time with our children. And so even so we actually have a time together where we actually read and watch movies together. We listen to commentaries, and my kids are very creative. My children, all four of them, are very creative kids. They don't give us really much trouble, praise God. But every single one of them has their own specifics to it. Now I'm not going to go into detail about who they are as persons, but for the most part, though, you have this scenario in a situation where as you're going through a situation in life, you feeling like things. So I'm just gonna give you a playback of my week and what happened last week, and that's just kind of I wrote it all down that way it could be like easy to kind of follow and where it's not too difficult. But because I wanted to just kind of talk to you about some things that I went through as steps to helping with it. So one thing, I'll just talk about things. On Monday last week was my sister's birthday. Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Oh, hello, Roblox. Welcome, everyone. Please like, share, subscribe, activate notifications. Feel free. Hello. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so this week, prepared for what happens on Monday. We prepared for our children's departure. We had to go and drive about 5 hours north, but we didn't go on Monday. We went on Friday. So on Tuesday, I did a body painting, and a body painting thing for me was kind of like a let it go. It's like some people say people have midlife crisis and stuff. Well, I didn't have a midlife crisis. I didn't. I've done a number of these body paintings with my friend Andy, a gentleman Andy Golub, and he's in the city, and he does his work, and he paints people, paints art on people. So you get paint head to toe with art, and so with that, that was kind of releasing pressure for me because I had to work the whole week, and then I was coming to the end of my work shift, and I went ahead and did this, and we were in front of the Guggenheim. So if you look around the Guggenheim, see me somewhere on the 10th, June 10th, right? So what happens? Did that, and in this situation there, I ran into a situation where I was dealing with some things in my heart, and this week has been that kind of thing where you're dealing with things in your heart. Because, for example, whatever you shy away from, you have to eventually deal with. For example, if you're afraid of spiders, you're gonna deal with spiders at some point. If you're afraid of water, you're gonna have to deal with water at some point. If you're afraid of heights, you're gonna have to deal with heights at some point. And you're gonna have to really deal with it. Things that incapacitate you from moving. Sometimes the things that we're afraid of, we have to really kind of take it into account and actually make a decision to go beyond our fear. So one fear that I had. I wouldn't have fear of being painted in the streets of New York City. I had no fear of that whatsoever. I had no fear when there was crowds around us. I had no fear of that at all. What was going through my mind, even then, I was thinking about what's going to be like to actually have, if thinking future thoughts. If you were to have your children, right, for example, go and get married, in the future, how my screen is glitching. Let's see. I'm just trying to make it higher. Okay, let's see. Higher. Put it higher. Maybe it might get better. You'll get a better signal if it's higher. All right. See. All right. So what happens is this. We have a situation. What's it going to be like when my kids come to get married, and where they have, they have to go to somewhere else and hand them over to some stranger who wasn't there when they were born. And I was thinking about it as I'm out there in the street, and I was asking myself, like, how am I going to deal with these things? So then my day went from, well, my wife and I decided we'll get some phones and be able to keep in contact with them if something happens. So next couple of days after that, we went ahead and got a phone, right? And then there was a problem with the sink, so I had to go and fix the kitchen sink. So on the Monday, Tuesday, went to do the body painting. On Wednesday, fixed the sink. I went home, went to Home Depot, bought a sink kit, and then I fixed it. You have to kind of put your mind and your thoughts into responsibilities and things that you're facing. So you're not kind of like just sitting there paralyzed. The one thing, you must never get paralyzed. Like like when a situation happens, we're able to respond to stuff. So we definitely don't want to just sit paralyzed and worry about the worst thing that could possibly happen. That's one of the things that we're saying about the person who possibly happen could be like our children. Anything can happen. I don't want to say possibly the bad things can happen, but for our kids, and our kids aren't like little kids. Kids are like 20, 22 kind of thing. They're like people say, oh, kids should be all right. That's no problem. For the most part, that's you know what do you have that's been in your life for many years and that you willfully give it over to someone else. And they volunteered to go to this program, and so we talked about how we are, willingness to have made a sculpture. I don't have it here. I might do some sculpting too. I might do some sculpting too. When I get through this list, I'm going to start sculpting something, and we could just ask me questions and we can talk. But for the most part, though, what happens is, like, um, I know people just to say that you'll get through this situation. I know we'll get through this situation. I understand it. Life situations. Every single day we get through situations. We go to work, we face bosses, we face our enemies at work, we face our friends at work, we face deadlines at work. We face that you're faced with a situation where when you're going through this, you're going to get through it. The worst case scenario, anything is event. That's the worst thing that can happen, right? You can't go to this job anymore. The worst thing can happen. Things that happen but it's gonna come back. But you also know there's gonna be lessons at play. So when you go to a situation, right, you have this thing where most majority of people go through a situation where they go to camp or they go to a camp program or camp adjacent where they're gonna be helping with the staff or helping with the work. They're gonna come back differently, and to what extent differently? That's what I'm concerned about, because imagine a person goes off to war, right? They go off to war. Or do you want to stay looking at the person that was before, or you want to kind of new and learn who the person is after? So it's kind of that transformation. You go from that transformation aspect is all the things that life have to offer that makes a person into what they are. That's the kind of thing that I'm concerned about, because what happens is we fix it, right? On Thursday, we went and got some phones for the kids. After that, we went ahead to Five Below and we went back home. Back to the sort of the proper things to cover the phone. After that, on Friday was a big day. Afterward, I went to we got the rent a car. Went to rent a car. I met my wife at the rent a car place, and it was a really nice car. It was a Pacifica. It was a Chrysler Pacifica, which is pretty beautiful, and it has like a lot of like bells and whistles on it. So it was kind of like new working on a car, because our car that we have just can't make that trip. We couldn't make that trip, so we had to kind of improvise and say, if we're gonna do this trip, we're gonna have to do something new, and that in itself was new, because last time we went up as a family together upstate, this was us conquering a fear. We had to get past the accident that we had last year. We actually went to mile marker 105.3 on the 87 Northway, and we had to get right past. And so when we went that far, and we got to the car accident, and the car did a 180. That's when we had a 180-degree tire blowout and all that stuff, and that was terrible. You saw the videos of how I had the best car in the world. That car had to get crunched. Anyways, long story short, what happens now? We actually did it. So on Friday, we drove past and went to the hotel where we can actually stay for the evening. My family and I we watched Star Trek: Next Generation, and incidentally, when we did that, it was one of those things where I learned that it was we watched a couple of Star Trek, one Star Trek episode, And then we had to go because we got there so late. We went to the wrong hotel first, went to the right one after. We parked our car, emptied the car, got upstairs, sat down. We didn't go to the pool, and then we just sat down and contemplated life. I unpacked all my stuff and started falling asleep. I actually fell asleep before I can complete the episode. And the next day we watched and Saturday we went to breakfast. And we had this thing called The Offspring. Watched The Offspring of Data's Offspring, and that was a really cool video. Really cool thing. I want to make something of that. I want to actually go ahead and start sculpting something about that because that was the Saturday when we had to make a decision to hand over our kids, right? Trying to figure out where the best light is. Let me see. Just load off real quick. Will light be better? I don't know. It's coming from straight now. Let me just do it this way. All right, let's do it this way. And I want to just the light, you know. I wish I could just pocket some. But anyway, so what happens is this, right? The Saturday is when it was a go day. Everything that had to happen. And it was like interesting because we had to go through many demons to get there. So we had to go through many and many struggles and many situations to get to the location we needed to get to. So we got there. We got past the problem of the highway. Got past the problem of I didn't even get into details about what happened. There was a situation that happened in the body paint that I just slowly glazed over. But I'll come back to it, I guess, or I'll just say it now because now I'm thinking about it. I have a situation where there was a person who wasn't my enemy, but like an enemy, but not an enemy. You know, in this situation, something happened, and I can't get to any more details than that, unfortunately. I just realized there's no way I could say this without saying anything that there's gonna be trouble. So I'm just gonna say it differently. Um, what happens is, right? I was in a situation where I had to maintain composure. Right, I was the most vulnerable I ever was, and in the midst of that vulnerability, I had to maintain composure because you have a thing where what's more vulnerable than being, you know, painted by strangers? I guess being by someone you know, right? That's something there, and someone you know, you had, you know, I can't get any more details on that. I can just say that when you have a situation like this, you have to kind of go through a thing where you had to just kind of work through a problem, and you have to work through it in your mind. Any external situations, kind of you ponder in your heart, kind of a thing. Sometimes when you deal with anxiety, you have to really ponder in your heart where you want to go with this, you know, because at the end of the day, right, you have it where people can't see what you're thinking. They don't see what you agitate, what you decide to do. So, for example, I can only think and ponder how to solve a question. I'll try to be a little bit because I'm trying my best to try and explain the story without giving details, without giving too many. It's like kind of like, you know, play chess, and some trying to win the game just with your pawns and not use your higher pieces. I'll try to explain. Well, it goes like this, right? You have this thing where you have people that come into your life and we don't no longer safe for them. No longer see you as stable or manageable. It's kind of like, you know, you're a taxi driver and you're supposed to drive as a taxi, and if you start driving recklessly, you start putting people, the passengers, in a fearful state because now they're not sure what you can do. You flip the car over, dangerous, but you stop playing the part. So there was a situation when finally we went up to the place. We have a lot of it's a high family, and so we have a lot of situations where we're actually going to um we have a situation where we're going to this place, and when we got there, we have a lot of memories about this place. We actually have a lot of my wife and I, we have a lot of memories, and you know, this makes it kind of difficult because I'm not sure who's listening to what I'm saying, but I'll say we used to work with the group that we were bringing the kids to. And when we went there, we saw a lot of things that had changed. You know, things can't stay the same. You know, things can't stay the same, unfortunately, because that's not life. Life actually requires change. Things change around you. You have to either change with it. It says, you know, a tree has a luxury of not being able to run from changes. It has to grow with the change, become thicker and stronger. You know, whereas a person, we can leave, we can get up, we can do stuff differently. And so, hi, Amy. And so what happens is like, you know, what goes on is that we are faced with a situation where we saw something that was different. So one situation was that there's a person in the event that made me consider deep things in my mind. There was an event where we had to drive across the street, drive past our last failed accident. We weren't able to get to our destination for camp last year, and then this year we were able to get past, and I was, you know, and July 28th of last year. We weren't able to make it, but we were able to make it today, June 6th, June 14th. We were able to make it past the point of we didn't make it past an 87. Then we went to our pretty much the place where we had an organization we worked at, and we saw how different it had become. It become a completely, totally different organization in terms of the fact that it has grown, has blossomed, and become a completely, totally different organization in terms of the fact that it has grown, has blossomed, has become bigger, better, and now more people can do more college stuff, you know. And so instantly, like without besmirching anything, that we saw it was a change, and that in of itself was like because we were of the mindset saying that we made a change, we were not allowed to change with them. So we started seeking other things. So I'm talking about like anxiety, right? And just dealing with the whole thing about anxiety, how you deal with it, right? And according to scriptures, the Bible says, be anxious for nothing. Don't be anxious because anxious means that you're afraid of something in the future, right? Acceptance, appreciation, gratitude is how you deal with, not so much gratitude. Gratitude is the wrong word. Anxiety, anticipation, and anxiety. You know, there's an aspect like anticipation. You're waiting, like the song says, anticipation, making me wait. And then you have that part, and you have the other part where it's like anxiety, where you're just afraid it was coming. I know people that are very anxious people, and they're so afraid of the future to the point where they are afraid to do anything. And because of that, it has cast a dark shadow on their life because they become a people of fear. And we're not supposed to be people of fear, people of trust. We're supposed to trust the Lord with all our heart, lean on our understanding. So then you have the Sunday on Father's Day. I was sitting there eating lunch with my kids, my two remaining kids and my wife, and we were just sitting there. And I made a little statue, right, of masking tape. I don't have it with me right in front of me right now. I wish I did, but what it was a little person, and he was holding a baby, right? And I had my diplocaulus. I had Deli here with me, right? And Deli was kind of there, and it looked like he's trying to eat the little baby kind of thing. Right? I have a little video if you look at my Instagram, right? And it said that we're serving and protecting our family. Right? So that we're serving kids over to the system. They're actually, you know, uh, they wise people, many rich people, what they do, they don't let their kids just go to regular school. They go to private school. They go to special school. Many of them homeschool. The reason why is because you want to instill the values of what you have as your family upon your children before they get pushed out into this world. I've talked to many people, and I work with a lot of people who are house school or who public school their children. And what happens is that we have this conversation talking about like how, they asked me why did we put into homeschooling as opposed to public school, and there's millions of reasons, but it comes down to just really because we just wanted to have them homeschool, and it comes down. I mean, you could say about how it's better because you get to spend more time with your kids, but we love our children. We don't want them to become strangers by way of the state, become like state property, and then they come to state indoctrinate. Like when I got out of school, right? When I got out of college, when I got out of high school, number one, I thought I was learning other things. I wasn't just learning the math and the science and all that stuff, And I did learn math and science, but on the history stuff, because when you come out of school, I had a world of a time trying to find a job. I had a hard time finding a job, and so I worked at like Boston Market. Back then it was Boston Chicken, and then I worked like I tried to raise as much money as possible. I worked on a dairy farm. I did all that, and then in my senior year, I worked at a library. Worked at a library, and I worked, just worked, and I worked as a camp counselor. And all these things were not what I learned in school. I didn't learn that in school. In school, I learned about math and how to pass a test and things like that. So I actually liked school because I studied as much as I could. I was a B student. I was happy to be. My sister was she was an A+ student. She was like for high school. She was a wonderful person. She did so many things, and she's still I did wonderful things, but she was always the best. She was the best, the best. So I'm like second one. I was like, I don't really care. I wanted, so I didn't care to be the best. I just realized that I want to learn the stuff that I'm seeing. I want to learn more about that. And so what ended up happening was that I was a B+ student, and I enjoyed that because I learned the stuff. I got a chance to see the world and understand stuff. So then what happened was like I liked school and I liked how it worked, but then I realized that the crowds, I didn't fit into the crowd. I don't think anybody fits into the crowd. You had to make your own crowd. And so the people that I hung out with were like the headbangers, and my senior year I had a Christian club. I had my own Christian club, and that was I wanted to do that. It was called the Seekers Christian Fellowship, and we had a club, and it was a fight club. People would come in from different religions and come to fight me. And so that was so much fun. And so that's something that helped me in my public speaking. So when I went to the the ministry and stuff, I was able to do public speaking very easily. I have no problem with that. Talking to people about stuff, things that are in my mind. And so instantly, what that makes it is that things that you fear of. Most people are afraid of like talking in front of people. How about being painted in the city in front of people? Like, most people are afraid of those kind of things. I'm not. My channel too. I've actually done painting myself. I might do that like this week. It's one of those things. I'm just kind of like just unloading the thoughts. But here's what I deal with the anxiety. I turned to Lord. I said, ask God for strength and wisdom. That day on I had a made little creature, and that creature was holding a baby. A man was holding the baby over the Diplocalus or Deli. Right? So Deli's mouth is open, and the way it looks like, here it is. We're saving kids from that, but we're gonna later break kids back to. So kind of like one statue telling two things: it's either being saved from the world at large, or being delivered to the world at large. I know it's like the husband's role, the dad's role to make sure to keep the kids safe is the mom's role, but to get the kids out there ready for the world is the dad's job. And with me, I look at how I grew up and my scenario. I'm not gonna get into my details about how I grew up. I mean, I told you a lot of details already, but for the most part, though, it's like there's an aspect where you have to, like, people saying you have to prepare your people for the real world. But then you realize that very quickly that the world that we are prepared for, the world that we were ready for, is not the world that they're ready for. This is a totally different world. And so it requires a totally different skill set. There's a basic skill set. That's why the Bible is really good, because it talks about human nature in general, and human nature is very specific. That there are people who will love you for who you are, and the same people will turn around and hate you because of who you are. And there's the enemies of that, the enemies, and what an enemy is, and what is a person that can actually do something. And what happens is, um, you have this thing where you what if we judge by how we deal with our enemies as opposed to how we deal with our friends? It's easy to deal with people who like you. It's hard to deal with people who don't like you. And that's kind of the scenario, the situation there. Um, I'm gonna make something. I was listening to this gentleman talk, and it talked about called deconstruction. And in deconstruction, I'm gonna make something. Deconstruction happens to be something where you have to take something apart and you look at it from a different angle, right? And to deconstruct something means you have to start with a basic. You have to know the pieces where they go. Like, I've seen these people, right? And what they do, they've actually made some really cool like structures and really cool things, but they have a basic idea in their head. Like I mean, for me, like, I've seen them make these robots. Right, take robots from like a Lego set, right, and they call it like a mod or MOC type thing, where they make up a character or something like that. I'm not sure if that's what it stands for, but they're able to take a character, right, take pieces from one set and turn it into a robot set, right? And I'm just like, dude, how do they do that? How do they do that? Now I'm wondering if it's like they program a machine that does it, or if they can do it from their own mind. Because what ends up happening is that they end up making like for example, they have a bunny, one that's a bunny or the panda, right? I'll take the Lego panda, Lego bunny, and they'll sit there and they'll transform, instead of the bunny or the panda, they make it into a robot or something, and the robot's kind of like the robot is kind of like some kind of like Gundam kind of a thing with a Gundam body, and it's very, very intense. You're like, oh my word, how do they make that? And so they do that, and you're just like, I can't believe they actually did such a really intense thing. So that's one. The other one is like where they take it and they make something. It's almost like a mod, like, and you're just like, how do they do that? And as I sit here making stuff out of masking tape, as you're sitting there watching me, it's like pretty much, it's like this is the same kind of thing. You could take something that you're not really sure exactly where you're going to go with it, and you make it into something else, you know? And so my you can't really talk about your biggest fears, because people will exploit your biggest fears. What you can talk about is how you overcame your biggest fears. So I'll tell you how I overcame some of my biggest fears. One, I had my biggest fears was that I was afraid of spiders. I was afraid of spiders. How I overcame it was I had to deal with spiders. I had to pick up a spider, I had to hold it in my hand for like 1 minute. Same thing with swimming. I was afraid of swimming in deep water, and I didn't only do it. I had to go and swim in deep water until I knew I could swim in deep water. And that's how it is. You can't touch the bottom. There is no bottom. You have to swim over that deep water. It gives you the ominous feeling, like, oh my word, this is too much. This is so scary. But the bottom line is that you can do it. And the next thing too is when you have to letting go of letting my kids go to this camp program. That was a big problem too, because that was something there. But before that, the big problem I had to deal with was actually driving past with my family again on the road. We're passing the mile marker, right? the mile marker where we're going, heading straight back down to the city. Heading up to the city, away from the city, and heading up to the next city, heading up to Albany, dealing with the whole mile marker thing where we actually had a car accident. And it was just like that's something there. So I was just saying like that's one of those things where that's dealing with your problems. You got to face your problems. You got to face them. That's it. You just got to go and face it. If you don't face your problems, the problems will come after you. If you don't face them, they will come after you, and you will continue to be imprisoned to them. So yeah, I understand about the whole thing with that. So it's like this is day 3 for me. My children, my wife, and kids. We're dealing with that. So what we do is we gave the kids phones so we could be in contact with them. We have trackers on their. We have things like that so we can see what they are. Any help. But it just comes to a point where you have to just trust that God is in control. And that's what happens because I always mention about the psychics and stuff like that, how the psychics they want to say that they can do this and that. But the bottom line is that, at the end of the day, the psychics don't know the future. Only God knows the future because God has been known to mess with psychics. He's been known to mess with future plans. Because people start off with plans and they're, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And God be like, So they always say, like, it's one of those things where you want to make God laugh, to tell him your plans. That's what happens. Just guide your plans, what you intend to do. So we bathed a lot of this in prayer. We asked God for wisdom as to what we should do. We thought whether or not we should actually, do this, send our kids up to this location. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should actually just not do it, cancel. But for the most part, that was something that we actually decided to do, and it took everything within us. We were fear, anxiety. We had, and just best way to do it is to fix it. And sometimes 99% of the things you worry about and stress about, it doesn't come to pass. And then some of the things too. There's a lot of things where I remember before when we went up there, we were under such control in terms of like we had to kind of like do what was required of us. We had to be there, had to be like the in a sense part of the staff, no part of the machine. When it's like when we are actually free from it, and actually say we are actually free from this machine, that we are no longer part of this machine. We've actually grown. Be afraid that something bad will happen. No, I'm afraid sometimes that something good will happen, but also that our kids are going to transform into something that we don't recognize. That was one of the things I was very much concerned about. That if your children come back and they come unrecognizable, how do you deal with that kind of thing? That's kind of the scenario there. So for the most part, though, that's something I just think about on the regular. And this is day 3 of that, so I'll kind of give you posts and stuff like that. I was gonna start writing letters because I said write letters to them. So I'm gonna go ahead and do some of that letter writing and putting together some pieces of just I don't know, whatever. I'm not gonna tell you because they say when you tell people what you can do, it's better to tell them what you already did, because when you tell them what you did. Okay, so before about going into status quo, and yet you're trying your best to try and figure out a way to get past it, So if you system, but what ends up happening is right. So that's kind of the thoughts. That's the thought process that I'm kind of through. I don't want to talk too long. I just realized that it's one of those things where I should go get some sleep because I have a nice long day ahead of me, and I could take the opportunity to get ready, or I could do body paint later or something like that. But for the most part, I just wanted to kind of like give you a heads up as to what we are doing, and I'm going to be part of a thing. I have a couple of classes and things like that we should we'll do such. When we make our plans to do something, it doesn't quite work out because sometimes we over plan. Like we were planning to go into the pool and swim, and some of us got a chance to do it, but all of us didn't get a chance to. So we had to say, okay, well, not all of us are going to make it to go there. So that was the Lord wills, really. If God wills, if God allows you to do something, you'll be able to do it. But if you're not, if He doesn't let you, if you're not part of His will, you're not going to do it. So no matter what, it's like, remember, God didn't make the world. We wouldn't have any, we wouldn't have any trouble in it, right? But we wouldn't have. Hey, what's up, Carlos? We wouldn't have any trouble in it, but also we wouldn't have any good parts about it too. For example, like some of the bad stuff you've been through in life, kind of brings good stuff too. So it's like, and also the ultimate stuff is heaven. Not that we have to earn heaven, but the fact that God was in Jesus, right? Jesus died for our sins and then gave us eternal life. If you believe in Him, right? And so those who believe in Him shall be. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, thou shalt be saved. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, you'll be saved. The Bible says, right? So if you believe on him, you go to heaven, and heaven is a wonderful place. And, you know, it's kind of the end of all of our labors, the end of all of our struggles is heaven. But anyway, so what happens is like, you know, for the most part though, when I was just kind of like just thinking about stuff, you know, we didn't really ask God to just direct us and give us hope and give us like, you know, direct us to what He wants us to do. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to knowing Him and also like not anxiety. You know, you I lost my train for that. According to the Old Testament, at least, you know, in the Old Testament adoration, God would not like that. You know, so I found that not just saying all the other sins, idolatry is the one that hits God first. That's what the Ten Commandments is. The covet, thou shalt not covet. Right? You go back on it. Next one is your false witness. Coveting is kind of like a secret sin. You know, you're doing something to deceive someone. You go backwards in time. It's yeah, and steal is the eighth commandment. Go backwards. It's the seventh one is thou shalt not kill. Right. Um. Actually, no. This seventh one is thou shalt not commit adultery. That's when you steal somebody's wife, right? Somebody's wife or somebody's husband. That's that one. Hey, I don't know if you will get this message right now. I see it's a blurry image. Oh, it's no. Try high. This one, because what happens is like, oh, maybe that's the case where people can't see it. All right, this is here. How's that? Is that better? Is that better? I think I this in the house. It's kind of one of those things. I might have to just do more live stream outside, more live stream outside. You know, because like this is like where I am. It's like we don't have that much of a good connection type here. Let me know. Can you see it? Can you see me? Are you seeing me? Give me a thumbs up if you can see me. A bit. Okay. All right. I don't know. Hmm. Okay. Well, that explains a lot. Okay. So can you see me better now? Okay. So your voice is better, but image still blocking me. Oh. Hmm. All right. I'll keep that in mind. What I'll do is that what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stop the video, and I'll probably do this in the car. Not tonight because I have no energy whatsoever. But what happens is that I'm gonna have to do this in the car from now on, because I think for what happens, maybe it's better to get a better signal. Because where I am, it's not. Okay, so what I'll do is that I will catch up with you guys. I was making a person, and so I'm just gonna stop now and dealing with anxiety. Just long story short, the whole thing dealing with anxiety is that trust the Lord with all your heart, right? Really trust that, because whenever I'm afraid, I will trust in you. We are dealing with some stuff, but for the most part, that we are trusting God to help us through that stuff. So I am going to I'm gonna end the stream right here, and we'll resume another time, probably tomorrow on day 4. God bless you. All right, bye.